My role here today will be to make you feel slightly better about the Irish situation. In case you're under any illusion that Ireland is remarkably bad on this subject, the United States is at least as bad. Our situation is much more similar than most Irish people and most American people realize. During the reporting on the Savita Halappanavar case last autumn, I read a piece in, I think, the Irish Times by an Irish Times reporter, Irish reporter who was taking a vacation in Los Angeles. And she was talking to people in Los Angeles about the Savita case, and she reported that universally the reaction was, "Oh my God, that can happen there? That's appalling." And she herself was embarrassed and said, "Yes, it's like that in Ireland." And apparently neither party, neither her American friends or she herself realized that actually the situation is almost exactly the same in the US. The same kind of thing can happen there, and it goes unpunished and unstopped and unprosecuted, mostly because it's a religious thing, and the state doesn't much want to get involved in that, partly because of the free exercise clause of the Constitution, which pretty much tells them that they're not allowed to interfere, but also just for reasons of political cowardice. They just don't want to mess with the bishops, and they don't want to mess with what they think is the enormous demographic of Catholics that would get outraged if they tried. So a paradigmatic case of this happened in Phoenix, Arizona, starting in 2009. A woman in her 20s, who had 4 small children at the time, went to St. Joseph's Hospital in Phoenix, and doctors found that she was pregnant, and doctors found that she had severe pulmonary hypertension, which was being made worse by the pregnancy. And they determined that she needed to have the pregnancy ended. She was 11 weeks pregnant, and they determined she needed to have the pregnancy ended because her life was at risk. And the ethics panel ruled on this, and they approved it. And this was, St. Joseph's is a Catholic hospital. Now, in a secular hospital, I don't think an abortion of this kind would go to an ethics panel at all. It would just be normal medical procedure, and it would just go ahead. But at St. Joseph's Hospital, it went to an ethics panel, and there was a nun on that panel, Sister Margaret McBride, and she approved the abortion, and the abortion went ahead, and the woman survived, and her 4 small children now still have their mother, which is a good thing. But the Bishop of Phoenix, Thomas Olmsted, was outraged by this, and he chastised Sister Margaret McBride, and this became a news media thing, something of a small, minor sensation, that the bishop was angry at a Catholic nun who's also the vice president of this hospital, that he was angry with her for approving an abortion that in fact saved a woman's life. But he wasn't just angry with the nun, and this is the part that was much less reported on in the United States. The bishop made a concerted effort to get the hospital to agree in writing never to do such a thing again. In other words, he tried to get a hospital administration to say, "Okay, Bishop, next time there is a woman who is at risk of dying from an early pregnancy, we won't save her. We'll just let her go ahead and die. We will do what the Galway Hospital did to Savita Halappanavar." But this part of the story was not as heavily reported on as the fact that the bishop shouted at Sister Margaret McBride. Now, fortunately, the hospital had some backbone, even though it's a Catholic hospital, and the administration consistently told the bishop, "Well, we're very sorry, Bishop, but no, we can't agree to that. You know, if it's a choice between a fetus that's not going to survive anyway, because the woman will die, and saving the woman, we're sorry, we have to decide that we can save one life, so we will save the woman's life." And the bishop sent them a ferocious letter, basically saying, "How dare you question the authority of your bishop? I am your bishop, and I get to say what goes here." this is not something, the hospital had said, this is something we can perhaps agree to disagree on, and the bishop said, oh no, we cannot. This is not something that people can just disagree on. This is church doctrine, and I am your bishop. And I am the one who gets to decide. You do not get to just tell me, oh, let's debate this. It's not a matter for debate. It's a matter for authority, and I'm the authority, and I say. And this was actually sort of supposed to be a secret letter, I think, but the newspaper, the Arizona Republic, leaked it. So it's now in the public domain, and you can find it online and read it in all its full horror. But the upshot was that still the hospital said no, and so that's where it stayed. But the bishop then stripped the hospital of its Catholic standing. And all that means actually is that they can't celebrate Mass in patients' rooms, and apart from the bishop, nobody really cares. But still, it's worth knowing that a bishop thinks it's worth doing that. And somewhat more significant than that is that in the aftermath of this, the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, which is one of the more evil institutions in the world, and is constantly interfering with U.S. politics, issued a statement, an official statement, reiterating what the bishop said and reiterating that this is official doctrine. There's a thing called the ethical and religious directives that the Catholic Church considers a kind of law in the U.S., although in fact, of course, it has nothing to do with the law, it's just Catholic doctrine. But they take it very seriously, and they think they have to make everything coordinate with the ERD. So the bishop's statement justified itself by talking about the ERD, and so they explained everything as well. This has to be in agreement with the ethical and religious directive. But basically that's just gobbledygook to disguise what they're doing, and what they're doing is just saying what the bishop said, which is no. You know, when there is a pregnancy that could be fatal to the mother, you must do nothing. You must do nothing that is direct abortion. Now, if it just so happens that a woman is pregnant and she has a tumor in her uterus at the same time, then you can take the uterus out because that's not direct abortion. But ending a pregnancy because it's causing pulmonary hypertension, no, you may not do that. You have to let the woman die. And this policy is the background policy of any Catholic institution. Now, some of them ignore it. You know, it's sort of notorious that in the U.S. there are a lot of liberal Catholics, and that most Catholics, in fact, ignore the Pope on the subject of contraception. But I think people assume, well, that means nothing bad ever really happens. It's not possible to assume that all Catholic hospitals in the United States simply ignore the bishop. That's not the case at all. A lot of them don't. And the Catholic Church is doing more and more and more taking over of existing hospitals in the U.S. and turning them into Catholic hospitals. And in many places, there's not a non-Catholic hospital for miles and miles and miles and miles, especially in rural areas. So if a woman in Arizona or New Mexico or parts of California or many other places has a problematic pregnancy or an ectopic pregnancy or hypertension or a number of other conditions and goes to her local hospital, and they say, well, no, sorry, there's nothing we can do about it because of these rules, but you know, there's a nice secular hospital 500 miles away. That's a problem. That's a big problem. The American Civil Liberties Union, the ACLU, in the wake of the Phoenix case, wrote a letter to the federal agency that's supposed to monitor this kind of thing, saying, could you please look into this, and could you please do your job and enforce the law and tell all Catholic hospitals and bishops, no, you can't run medical care according to religious rules. There are laws on these things, and you can't turn patients away when they have life-threatening conditions. And so far, the feds have just pretty much continued to say, well, we're looking into it. And beyond that, nothing much has happened. So I think Atheist Ireland and the ACLU should team up and make something happen. Thank you.